Welcome back to Midnight Confessions. There are places on this map that don't want to be found, and there are jobs that pay too well for a reason. Tonight's story takes us deep into the wilderness, where the only thing louder than the silence is the thing mimicking your voice. Get comfortable, lock your doors, let the confession begin. I've always been a loner. That's why, when I saw the posting for a fire lookout position in the Bitterroot Mountains, I didn't hesitate. The pay was triple the standard rate. The contract was for 3 months. Total isolation. No cell service. Just a radio, a generator, and miles of green ocean. I arrived at the trailhead just as the sun was beginning to dip below the peaks. The hike up was grueling. By the time I reached the tower, my legs were burning. It stood like a skeleton against the darkening sky. 70 feet of steel and glass. Inside, the cab was smaller than I expected. A cot, a propane stove, a desk with a radio, and windows on all 4 sides. A glass box in the sky. On the desk, weighed down by a heavy iron key, was a binder. It was labeled Procedures. I flipped it open, expecting instructions on how to triangulate smoke or maintain the generator. Instead, on the very first page, written in shaky handwriting, was a list of rules. Rule 1. Keep the trapdoor locked from dusk until dawn. No exceptions. Rule 2. Do not respond to any radio transmissions between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., even if it sounds like your supervisor. Rule 3. If you see a fire that burns blue, do not report it. Turn off the lights and lie on the floor until it goes out. Rule 4. If you hear someone climbing the stairs at night, don't look down. I laughed. I actually laughed. I thought it was a hazing ritual, a joke left by the last guy to spook the rookie. I tossed the binder onto the cot and started unpacking. I should have hiked back down a mountain right then and there. The first week was peaceful, just the wind and the static of the radio. But on the 8th night, things changed. It was 2:15 a.m. I was reading a book by lantern light when the radio crackled to life. Tower 4, this is dispatch. Come in. The voice was clear. It sounded like Sarah, the dispatcher I checked in with every morning at 8 a.m. I reached for the mic, my thumb hovering over the button. Then I froze. Rule 2. Do not respond between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. I hesitated. It was Sarah. I knew her cadence. Tower 4, are you there? We have a report of a hiker injured near your base. Please advise. I grabbed the mic. Dispatch. This is Tower 4. I copy. What's the location? Static. Then, Sarah's voice came back, but it was wrong. The pitch shifted mid-sentence. Tower 4. Open the trapdoor. Check. Outside. My blood ran cold. That wasn't Sarah. It sounded like distinct audio clips of her voice being spliced together. Open the door. Elias. I dropped the mic. I hadn't told anyone my name was Elias. I used my ID number on the radio. The radio clicked off. Silence returned. But now, the silence felt heavy, like the air pressure in the cabin had dropped. 3 nights later, I saw it. I woke up to a strange light washing over the cabin. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, and looked out the north-facing window. About a mile out, deep in the ravine, a fire was burning, but it wasn't orange. It was a cold, electric blue. It didn't flicker like a normal fire. It stood perfectly still, like a solid column of light rising into the clouds. I instinctively reached for the alidate to get the coordinates. Then I remember the binder. Rule 3. If you see a fire that burns blue, lie on the floor. My heart hammered against my ribs. I killed the lantern. I dropped to the wooden floorboards, pressing my face against the cold dust. I lay there for what felt like hours. The blue light was so bright, it cast moving shadows inside the cabin, even through the closed windows. Shadows that didn't match the furniture. Elongated, stretching shadows that looked like fingers feeling around the room. I heard a sound from outside. Not the wind. It was a low, vibrating hum, like a massive generator running deep underground. It vibrated in my teeth. Then it stopped. The light vanished instantly. I didn't move until the sun came up. By week 3, the isolation was eating me alive. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours a night. It was a Tuesday. The wind was howling, rattling the glass panes. But over the wind, I heard it. Clang, 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 metal on metal. Someone was walking up the stairs. There are 112 steps to the cab. I counted the footsteps. They were heavy, wet, like someone walking in soaking wet boots. Clang. Step 80. I backed away from the trapdoor. I checked the padlock. It was secured. Clang. Step 90. Rule 4. Don't look down. I stared at the wall. I refused to look through the floor grating. The footsteps stopped on a landing right outside the door. Then came a knock. Knock, knock, knock. A voice, muffled by the wind, drifted through the gap. Elias? It's the ranger. Open up, buddy. You missed your check-in. It sounded like a man. A normal, concerned man. I almost reached for the key. Almost. I didn't miss a check-in. I whispered to myself. I checked in at 8 a.m. The voice outside changed immediately. The concern vanished. Open the door, Elias. It wasn't asking anymore. Open the door. Open the door. Open the door. The handle jiggled violently. The heavy iron door shook in its frame. I grabbed the flare gun from the emergency kit and aimed at the trapdoor. Go away, I screamed. The shaking stopped. Silence. Then a low, guttural sound, like a laugh, followed by the sound of footsteps running downstairs. But they were too fast. Clang, 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 clang. Whatever it was, it didn't descend like a human. It scuttled. I didn't wait for my contract to end. As soon as the sun hit the treetops, I packed my bag. I left the radio. I left the money. I unlocked the trapdoor, my hand shaking so bad I almost dropped the key. When I pushed the door open, I saw the scratches. Deep, jagged gouges in the steel. They weren't from a bear. They were too precise. And there was a residue. A thick, black slime that smelled like ozone and rotting meat. I ran down those stairs faster than I've ever moved in my life. I didn't look back at the tower. But as I reached the tree line, I felt it. That feeling of being watched. I turned around one last time. Standing on the catwalk, 70 feet up, was a figure. It was wearing my clothes. It was wearing my face. And it waved at me. I drove until my gas tank was empty. I'm back in the city now. But last night, my phone rang at 3 a.m. It was a restricted number. I didn't answer, but the voicemail was just 3 minutes of static, and then my own voice whispering, "You forgot to lock the door, Elias." Some jobs have high turnover for a reason, and some places in the wild, they get hungry. If you enjoyed this dive into the deep woods, hit subscribe. And remember, if you hear your name called in the dark, don't answer. Sweet dreams.